And that's not to mention what some economists consider the real unemployment rate, which grew last month to an astounding 16.8%. Good morning, Ron. Well, as described, this is a crude device, and yet it had all the makings of a car bomb. But there is still some flooding, obviously. I'm standing on the banks of a river. You can usually see this dock next to me. And in the Olympic area, they've raised a lot of these traditional neighborhoods to make way for construction. The sign that they're about to raise this one is this Chinese character, which essentially means demolish. Musharraf has always drawn his power from the military. Now, as a civilian president, he is counting on the army for its continued loyalty. Right now, my cameraman is filming me with a hidden camera because the last time we tried to interview people in this Tibetan neighborhood, police forced us to leave. Just several miles from the epicenter, all the main roads into the county have been blocked by landslides, and so troops are evacuating residents still from this city through this narrow, steep passage. Parents suspect there simply was not enough steel holding all this concrete together. You can see those concrete slabs, which used to be the floors of 4 classrooms. When the quake happened, they simply caved in. So I am here on the 20th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. You can see the square behind me. I am expecting at any moment to be approached by one of the many policemen or security guards that are guarding the square today. Earlier, I know they were using umbrellas to block journalists. I'm going to just continue to talk to you. But this is, see, they're holding newspapers up to try to obstruct me from even talking right now, and you can see that they're undercover, and he's just folded the newspaper out completely. It's almost comical, actually. So we're now being swarmed by security. Rock climbing is actually highly technical with ropes, a harness, all of this gear to keep me safe. John Backer didn't use any of it.
One of the benefits of these gliders for police surveillance is that they can fly very low and at low speed. So right now we're flying just about 15 feet above the ground.
But who brings a shot glass to the pool? Just apply generously. Reapply every 1 to 2 hours and don't miss any spots. I'm trying out a new diet. The food is high in protein, low in fat, and all organic. The catch is, it crawls.
And as I discovered, CrossFit involves really intense activity.
Experts say weight is only one factor in health, albeit an important one.
Here's Stephanie Sy.
He literally lived on the edge, hanging by his fingertips hundreds of feet in the air. John Backer was a pioneer of so-called free solo climbing, meaning no ropes and no second chances. He was immortalized in the documentary, Backer, One Man, One Myth, One Legend.
You do have to take life with a certain amount of risk.
Backer tackled even the formidable El Capitan in Yosemite. So sure of his singular ability, Backer once offered $10,000 to anyone who could keep up with him for a single day.
Traditional rock climbing is actually highly technical with ropes, a harness, all of this gear to keep me safe. John Backer didn't use any of it.
At his peak, he was climbing stuff that people wouldn't even be willing to climb with ropes on. He was climbing the hardest stuff out there.
And is there a different thrill about doing that, free form, no ropes?
You definitely are in the moment, that's for sure.
Climbers today still argue over whether free solo climbing is the purest form of the sport or the height of recklessness.
Some people say that he was doing what he loved to do, and they're proud of him for doing it. Some people will react and say that it's ridiculous. It was inevitable that he was going to fall off eventually.
Backer climbed 1.5 million feet of rock without rope during his long career. He fell to his death this past week at the age of 52 from a cliff near his home in California that he'd climbed dozens of times. Backer took pride in leaving nature undisturbed. He never drove a bolt into the cliffs he climbed. But on the sport, he left a lasting impression. Stephanie Sy, ABC News, New Paltz, New York.
ABC's Stephanie Sy is right downstairs in Times Square. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Ron. Well, as described, this is a crude device, and yet it had all the makings of a car bomb, and that is how investigators are treating it. So this morning, They have taken the car away, the SUV. They found components in that car, including propane, gasoline, as well as what appeared to be 2 timers. They are going to try to determine how much damage this device could have done. This is the latest video from this morning of them towing that SUV around away. They do not have suspects or a motive right now. They do believe they caught this car on surveillance video, and they will be scouring security tapes to try and identify who may have planted this bomb. Right now, Ron, the streets around Times Square are open and life is returning to normal, but investigators are treating this very seriously. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Stephanie.
Good evening, David. Well, the mayor of Pittsburgh had preemptively put this city under a state of emergency a couple of days ago, and here's why. Take a look at this picture from 1996. Major flooding, and you can see those flood waters rose all the way up, almost hitting those skyscrapers. That's what they were worried about. Now forecasters have downgraded their predictions for river cresting here in Pennsylvania, but other states are not faring as well.
Heavy rain and wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour are only the beginning. Adding insult to injury, places that saw historic snowfall this winter now face flooding from a persistent rainstorm. From Pennsylvania down south to the nation's capital, rivers are at or near flood level, the result of rapid snowmelt, rain, and a new moon.
New moon's important because on top of the enhanced tides, that's going to add more tidal flooding. That may raise the normal tide maybe a foot or a foot and a half.
In West Virginia, a woman is dead after being swept away by a swollen stream. And a firefighter assisting in water rescues is missing after his boat capsized. The worst of the flooding was expected in Pennsylvania, but is yet to materialize, although people here were prepared for the worst.
Looks like it was quite a bit of work.
It was a lot of work. We had to play it safe. So better to be safe than sorry.
It's kind of spooky when you go down and look at the river and, knowing there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, for now, it looks like Pennsylvania has dodged a bullet, but there is still some flooding, obviously. I'm standing on the banks of a river. You can usually see this dock next to me, and you can see this trash can submerged in about 6 inches of water. This rain, David, may last in parts of the Northeast through Monday. Back to you.
Right.
The February jobs report shows unemployment may have bottomed out. The question is, how long do we stay at the bottom as businesses struggle to regain confidence?
They were put through the proverbial ringer not too long ago. Many suffered near-death experiences, and I don't think they're going to forget that very quickly.
Wall Street started to celebrate on news that unemployment held steady last month, but the good news won't be shared equally in the new economy. While a few industries such as healthcare and education are growing, other industries may never be what they were. Construction and financial services were transformed by the crisis. Workers over 55 may face the biggest hurdle.
Some will encounter age discrimination. That is a reality for older workers. It's illegal, but it happens.
It's unfortunate for those workers right now because they have to retrain and move to a different sector of the economy.
And for that to happen, the economy must create new jobs.
We've had about 7 million fewer new jobs created. So those workers who have lost their job have had a much more difficult time finding the new work.
2 years of the Great Recession led to 8.4 million job losses. But because the workforce is constantly growing, we need 11 million new jobs just to get back to where we were at the start of the recession. That translates into 400,000 new jobs every month for 3 years.
Historically, we have never really created in any kind of sustained way that many jobs every single month. So that is a heavy lift. That is why it's going to take a long time for us to get out of this hole, put people back to work.
And that's not to mention what some economists consider the real unemployment rate, which grew last month to an astounding 16.8%. That includes workers who were forced to go part-time and discouraged job seekers who, David, simply stopped looking.
Have given up. Stephanie, really something. You point out 11 million jobs just to make up for the 8.5 million lost.
Yeah, you can't forget that every month there's about 100,000 people that enter the workforce that need jobs. So all those extra people just keep accumulating.
All right, really something. Stephanie, thanks.
Amid the devastation, which claimed 80% of the buildings in Juyuan, we found Chen Qing kneeling next to her husband's body. He was crushed when their house tumbled down. "I'm blessing his soul," she says, describing the ancient Chinese custom of burning paper money for the deceased.
These structures didn't even stand a chance. They're more than 100 years old and made of clay bricks, not built to withstand an earthquake.
Neither was the city's high school, which buried 900 students when it collapsed. At the scene today, rescuers heard no signs of life.
Now there's no voice from students. Hope it's gone.
16-year-old Wang Fu is one of about 50 students to survive. He was buried for half an hour before a teacher heard his cries and pulled him to safety. I don't feel pain at all, just numb, he says. My parents are putting up tents now because our home was also flattened. We then traveled 10 miles down the road to Dujiangyan. This sprawling city of 500,000 people now looks like a refugee camp. Thousands of homeless families living on the streets.
You can really see the destructiveness of this massive earthquake in this city, where at least a dozen of these massive apartment blocks were completely decimated.
We watched this woman wait anxiously as workers pick through the remnants of her apartment building. When they discover her husband dead, she is devastated. They place his body carelessly on the street next to another corpse lying on a slab of cardboard. It's crude work, but with so many more victims to recover, there's little time to treat the dead with dignity. Stephanie Tsai, ABC News, Dujiangyan, China. Outside the Mianyang Sports Stadium, we found a sea of people with no place to go. But we also found a working community supported by hundreds of volunteers who have come from neighboring provinces. Buddhist monks man the endless food lines serving hot rice and vegetables. Healthcare workers treat cuts and scrapes. There are even barbers clipping hair. In the midst of the crowded pavement, we met the Wangs, a family of farmers. We lost 24 pigs and 2,000 yuan, she says. We couldn't get anything out of the house. When I ask why he's crying, 12-year-old Wang Yuan says, because we don't have a home anymore. But at least here they have the basics.
The some 20,000 people that have sought shelter in this sports stadium are considered the lucky ones. They may be homeless, but here they are fed and clothed, and they are alive.
And they have a service considered a luxury for most Chinese people, mental health care. We met a group of psychologists encouraging children to express themselves through drawing, like 4-year-old Zhou Hua, who survived the collapse of his home. We can see through his drawing, he says, that this kid is really scared. Psychologists say the youngest should bounce back quickly if they're well cared for. For now, this temporary refuge with its fully equipped jungle gym seems to be doing the job. So many happy children, a rare sight since the quake hit. In the food line, we finally see a smile from Wang Yuan. His family is living day by day, not sure how they'll rebuild their lives, but grateful they're not alone. Stephanie Tsai, ABC News, Mianyang, China.